the CEO of Jawitz Properties, says the proposed increase of valuations of homes in Johannesburg is not fair. Hershel Jawitz says the proposed increase to the general valuations role is hard to justify given the state of the city and poor service delivery. The city intends to implement a 12% increase in rates and taxes from July. We are joined by the CEO, Hershel Jawitz. Thank you for being with us, Mr. Jawitz. Please, let's first explain the purpose of the valuations role. So your property value determines how much you pay essentially for these specific rates and taxes.
Correct. And so firstly, thanks for having me on the show and to your viewers. So correct. So it's common practice amongst all cities around the world that the city collects taxes based on the value of your home, and in return for paying those taxes, what residents of a city are entitled to expect is infrastructure, service delivery, and that includes road infrastructure, that includes policing, power, and a whole host of other services. So it's not specifically the point around whether the rates are going up. I think for many homeowners, although it does, given the state of the property market, but I think most homeowners within the city of Joburg and the wider are very frustrated about the lack of services that we get in return.
Sure. So this goes for road maintenance, some of the things you've mentioned. On the other hand, we could say, look, municipalities are struggling. They need billions. If you don't increase this source of revenue that's crucial for them, things are going to get even worse.
Well, I think that, the question is whether they need to increase it. Number one, depends on whether property values have increased. And the city of Joburg has come out with their budgets and their targets for collections, and they're entitled to do that across a range of services that they provide to the city. So power, water, infrastructure, number one. But I think that really the question here is how the money is spent. And so when very little of that money seems to be going back into what it's intended for, so road infrastructure, traffic lights, policing, traffic control where there is load shedding, for example, I think that's really what Joburg residents find hard to justify. It's not the increase, but it's the way in which the money is being spent or not spent, and where the money is going, that I think Joburg residents have a right to feel highly aggrieved about.
Am I right to say that to raise property rates by 12%, the city now will generally raise the value of everybody's house or apartment by 12%?
On average. So I think the number is increasing the overall value of property in the city of Johannesburg, in the municipal area. I think from the numbers from 1.4 to 1.59 trillion rand. I think that's the number. So on average, some residents may have found that their values have gone up slightly less, and there are many residents that have found that their values have gone up by more than the 12%. And so on top of the issue around service delivery and what we're getting or what we're not getting back from the city is also the general state of the residential property market, and specifically in this case in Johannesburg. And if you look what has happened in the residential property market in the city of Johannesburg over the last 5 years, many homeowners who are trying to sell their homes or who have sold their homes are probably finding that the value of those homes have barely increased from 5 years ago, let alone going up by 12%. Yeah. So it's one of the infrastructure, and it's the second part is what's actually happening on the ground in the market versus what the council is saying.
I think, as you've recounted, properties are rising, if they're rising at all, below inflation. So they're going down in real terms. What is the implication of a mismatch then? You warn of some implications around SARS, although isn't there a benefit if somebody wants to get a bond to buy your house, the banks will look at the valuation roll, so that they may get more?
Well, I think there are two issues. So one, just a word of caution. I think we often find that many sellers in the city of Johannesburg don't take the time to look at what the new valuation is going to be, and then suddenly they discover that they're paying an extra 1,000 or 2 or 3 or maybe even more. So it's worth taking the time. It's easy to access. You go onto the City of Johannesburg rates valuation roll, have a look at the value, and then decide whether you think that value is reasonable, and you can get a professional valuation of your home. I think just the one area to take note of is that what we do find, to the credit of SARS, is that if the sale price of your home is less than the municipal valuation, it generally flags an inquiry from SARS to say, is this an arm's length transaction? Is this a market-related transaction? Or is there something else going on here in terms of, for example, transfer duty avoidance? And so it just adds a layer of paperwork and some complexity in terms of then justifying to SARS why you've sold your property at less than what the city is saying it's worth.
All right, very quickly. So you are encouraging people to look at these valuations. How much leeway do they have to push back? Does the city respond if they push back against the valuations?
So we found over the years that in many instances the city does respond, perhaps not to the degree or to the level that a homeowner might want their property to be valued. There is a process to go through. You've got to complete a form. You've got to supply supporting information, which you can get from any reputable estate agent who will be able to provide you with that information. Generally, they do look at it, and they'll come back to you say, we've adjusted it down to X, or we're leaving it at Y based on certain factors. But it's worth taking the time, and especially in the current environment where there's pressures on disposable income, fuel prices, food prices, that it may mean an extra 1,000 or 2 or 3 more. And remember that this is a 5-year valuation roll. So this is not about something that can be revalued next year or the year after. They do open an interim roll, but you're going to be paying these higher rates for 5 years, and that can add up to a lot of money over time.
All right, thank you very much. That was the CEO of Jawitz Properties, Hershel Jawitz.